I spent 3 summers as a fire lookout in Yellowstone. I needed to clear my head after a rough breakup, so I took the job. My days were filled with endless trees and bright blue skies. It felt peaceful during the day, but nights, they were a different story. One evening, I set up my little cabin. The air was cool, the scent of pines surrounded me. The stars felt close, almost pressing down. Night rolled in and quiet surrounded me. I thought it would be lonely, but calming. That was until the tapping started. At first, it was soft, just a light thud against the walls. I tried to ignore it. Maybe a raccoon or the wind playing tricks? I felt uneasy, but dismissed it. Around midnight, the noise came again. Thud, thud. It felt like it was syncing with my heartbeat. I got up and peeked outside. The moon was bright, shadows stretched long under the trees. I saw nothing. It was probably just branches shifting. I returned to my chair, but couldn't sleep. My mind raced with thoughts. The next night, the tapping grew louder. Then I heard whispers. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but they were real. I listened closely, trying to make sense of what was being said. It felt like some hidden language, just out of reach. My heart raced. I must be imagining it, I thought. In the daylight, I searched for tracks around the cabin. Nothing added up. Days felt long, and the whispers grew clearer. I felt eyes watching me from the dark trees. I caught glimpses of movement. One time, I thought I saw a figure lurking just beyond the light. Was it my imagination? I couldn't tell anymore. It felt like I was losing grip on reality. Every night, the whispers turned into laughter. It felt wrong. Cold crept into my bones. I stepped outside, scanning the area. The stars were bright, but the forest felt too alive. I was terrified and ready to scream, but something held me back. Then I heard it, a voice, soft and low. "Why don't you come play with us?" I froze, searching for where the voice came from. There was no one around, just trees and shadows. My breath caught in my throat. I was utterly alone, yet I felt anything but safe. It was like the forest was alive with something watching, waiting for me to give in. I stepped back into the cabin, the walls suddenly feeling like they were closing in. That night, I locked every door and shuttered the windows. I stayed awake, nerves raw, hearing the whispers all around me. I wanted to escape, to drive back down the mountain, but I couldn't leave. I needed to finish my shift. 3 years later, I still think about that summer, the whispers echoing in my mind. I never figured out what happened. I wasn't alone out there, though I wished I had been. I still wonder what
those voices wanted, what they meant by play. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever really escape them. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the chair, clutching a flashlight, jumping at every crack and creak the cabin made. By dawn, exhaustion hit me hard. I couldn't tell if it was a dream or reality, but I swore I still heard laughter echoing in my mind. When morning finally broke, I stumbled outside. The forest was serene, brightened by the sun filtering through the trees. Birds chirped, almost mocking me. I shook my head, as if trying to rid it of the dreams that haunted me. I spotted fresh tracks in the mud, small and bare. Could it have been a child's footprint? I studied the ground carefully, heart racing, wondering if I was losing it completely. Those tracks led away from my cabin and deeper into the woods. The forest remained quiet, as if it held its breath. Against my better judgment, I decided to follow the trail. Maybe I would find answers. Maybe I would find nothing. Still, curiosity pulled me in. I wandered for what felt like hours. Sunlight swayed through branches, casting odd shadows that seemed to dance. The whispering returned, this time clearer than before. I almost turned back, but something inside pushed me on. Then everything shifted. The whispers transformed into a distinct chant. I stopped, my heart pounding. "Come play with us. Come join us," it echoed. Goosebumps spread across my arms. I shook my head, forcing myself to think logically. It was just wind, just my mind playing tricks. But deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Going deeper into the woods felt wrong. The trees loomed larger, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers. I felt vulnerable, like prey. But I kept walking, driven by an unexplainable pull. Then I heard it again. A child's laughter danced through the trees, light and carefree. My instinct screamed at me to retreat, but my feet wouldn't move. Just a few more steps, I thought. I stepped cautiously, the ground damp beneath my boots. I approached a clearing. That's when I saw it. In the center, a circle of stones surrounded a patch of bare ground. The laughter was louder now, echoing around me, but I still couldn't see anyone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This was no gathering of friendly spirits. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. Silence fell heavy and thick. I looked around, heart racing. The shadows behind the trees seemed to swell, pooling like thick ink. Panic gripped me. It felt like something was shifting, turning its focus toward me. I took a step back, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I heard a voice, this time angry and sharp. "Why won't you play?" I turned on my heel, adrenaline surging through me. I sprinted back the way I came, weaving between trees. The laughter returned, mocking me, echoing through the woods. I didn't look back.
My instincts guided me home, but fear clawed at me, chasing me through the forest. When I finally reached my cabin, I slammed the door behind me. I locked it tight, trembling as I sank against the wall. My chest heaved, and I felt tears prickling. I had escaped whatever was out there, but now the real question haunted me. What had I stumbled upon? The sun dipped low in the sky, and the forest darkened once more. I could still hear the faint echoes of laughter, still feel their eyes watching. It wasn't over. Not yet. I couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. I sat on the floor, the hard wood pressing into my back as I tried to catch my breath. The cabin felt both like a sanctuary and a prison. The door was locked, but that didn't make me feel safe. My ears strained for any sound, any hint that the laughter was close again. I forced myself to stand. It was time to confront this. I needed answers, not just fear. Bracing myself, I grabbed the flashlight, my only source of comfort, and moved to the small table where I kept my supplies. A notebook lay open, pages filled with observations about the forest. But today, there were new notes I needed to make. I scribbled down everything I had experienced, trying to organize my thoughts. Whispers, laughter, the circle of stones. My handwriting was messy, shaky, as if an unseen hand guided the pen. I paused, looking at the entries. It was all odd, too odd. This place was supposed to be peaceful. I had signed up to be a lookout, to enjoy nature, not to become part of some twisted game. Suddenly, I heard a noise outside, a faint rustling, followed by a soft thud. My heart raced. Was I imagining it? I pressed my ear against the door, but couldn't hear clearly. The world outside felt both familiar and alien, cloaked in shadows. Gathering my courage, I decided to peek through a window. I slowly pulled the curtains aside. Nothing moved immediately, but then I froze. I spotted a figure at the edge of the clearing, small and cloaked in darkness. It stood perfectly still, resembling a child, but surrounded by an aura of something sinister. My pulse quickened. Was it real or another trick of my mind? My breath hitched as I thought back to the footprints. Then it turned its head, and my heart dropped. Its eyes glinted in the fading light, reflecting something unnatural. I stumbled back from the window, fear gripping my throat. What was out there? I could feel their presence, cold and watchful. It wasn't just one child. I sensed a group, waiting, lurking. I backed away from the door, every instinct urging me to stay hidden. My eyes darted around the room and landed on the pantry. Maybe I could find something to defend myself if it came to that. But as I reached for the door, the shadows of the room seemed to cling to me like a shroud, almost urging me to stay put, to surrender to the fear. Then the laughter started again, buoyed by a soft wind that crept through the cracks of the cabin. "Come join us," they chimed, a chorus awakening dread deep within me. My hands shook as I covered my ears, but it didn't help. Out of desperation, I grabbed my larger flashlight, the one with the strobe setting. I flipped it on, the blinding beam shooting out like a lifeline into the encroaching darkness. I had to break the spell. I had to show them I wouldn't be scared any longer. Just then, the door rattled forcefully. I jumped, heart racing. Something was trying to get in. I took a breath, ready to confront whatever was on the other side. I had to know. What did they want from me? As I pressed my back against the wall, preparing myself, I thought I glimpsed movement outside the window again. Shadows flickered, and I heard the soft chanting return. The words morphed into a sing-song desperation around me. My heart raced. This was only the beginning. Then, everything went still. A sudden, eerie silence fell over the cabin. I tensed, waiting for the next sound, anything to tell me what was happening outside. But no sound came. Not from the woods, not from the door. It was as if the world had paused. Finally, I dared to peek out again. That's when I saw it. A figure standing beneath the trees, holding something in its hands. My breath caught as I realized what it was. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. I wasn't prepared for this discovery. I blinked hard, willing my eyes to adjust. The figure was still there, unnaturally still, clutching what looked like a small doll. I held my breath, fighting the urge to scream. It was almost too much to process. A child? In the woods? Was this some kind of trap? I squinted, trying to make out more details. The doll appeared frayed and weather-worn, as if it had been left behind long ago. And then I saw it. The doll's eyes. They gleamed with the same eerie reflection as the figure's. A chill washed over me. My heart raced as I fought against the chilling grip of fear. I needed to know what was going on. Gathering all my courage, I raised the flashlight again and flipped on the strobe mode, casting frenzied beams onto the figure. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Why are you here?" No response came. The figure remained frozen, its hollow gaze locked on me, the doll hanging limply, as if it carried a weight beyond its size. I felt cornered, not just by the entity outside, but by the weight of my own uncertainty. Suddenly, movement erupted in the tree line behind the figure. More shadows slipped through the darkness, emerging one by one. They looked like children, their faces streaked with dirt and an otherworldly glow. My mind flooded with thoughts. Were they lost? Were they real? As I took a step back, my heel caught the edge of the floorboard, sending a loud creak echoing through the cabin. The figures paused, turning their heads in unison, as if my noise shattered an invisible barrier. Panic kicked in, and I turned on my heel. "I need to get out of here," I whispered to myself. But as I reached for the door, I froze again, realizing how foolish it would be to step out into the unknown. They were waiting for me, and escape felt like a trap. The laughter returned, this time sharper and more sinister. "Stay with us," they chimed, voices layered, blending like a haunting melody. It echoed in the corners of my mind, making it hard to think. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to drown them out. Just then, I remembered the circle of stones. What if that was somehow connected to this? My notebook, the notes I had made about the whispers, the rituals. Were they trying to lure me into their game? I moved away from the door, racing to the table where my notebook lay open. I flipped through the pages, frantically searching for any mention of the stones or the laughter. The figures outside continued to stand their ground, watching intently, as if they could sense my desperation. And then I found it. I had jotted down something about a legend, a warning. Children who lost their way in the forest would call for help, but lure you instead. They wanted companionship, buyers for their ancient pact. That realization knocked the breath out of me. I slammed the notebook shut, breathing heavily, terror coursing through me. They weren't innocent kids in need of help. They were part of something much darker. A sudden rustle caught my attention. I turned back to the window, and my blood ran cold. One of the figures was moving closer to the cabin. I had to act fast. But before I could decide, the door rattled again, more violently this time. I took a step back, my mind racing. I could feel it, the urgency, the need to get away. But the whispers were louder now, filling the cabin with an eerie promise. As I braced for the next moment, I realized whatever was outside wasn't just watching anymore. They were preparing to come in. And I had no idea how I would survive the dark game they were playing. I could hear the scratching now, tiny, persistent noises, as if something was trying to find a way inside. My heart pounded in my chest. I glanced around the cabin, searching for anything I could use to defend myself. The table was cluttered with old camping gear, but none of it felt like enough. The doorknob rattled again, and then it twisted slowly. I pressed my back against the wall, heart racing. What if?
It just opened? What would I do then? The figures outside were still shadowy, their outlines flickering in and out of the flashlight's beam. It was as if some malevolent force was keeping them cloaked in darkness. Suddenly, the door slammed open, splintering against the wall. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the first figure slip inside. It was the one clutching the doll. I could see its face clearly now, a grim mask of innocence twisted into something grotesque. Hollow eyes stared back at me, devoid of any color, just like the doll's. "Play with us," it whispered. Before I could respond, the other figures poured in, filling the small cabin like a dark fog. The laughter surrounded me, echoing off the walls, making it hard to focus. I stumbled back, my mind racing. These weren't just children. They were something else, an echo of what once was. I felt their vacant stares boring into me. "You shouldn't have come here," one of them said, stepping closer, its voice grave. "You heard the laughter. You came to play." I shook my head. "No, I'm not here to play." The panic surged inside me, fueling my desperate need to escape. I needed to remember the stones, the protection they supposedly offered. The space felt suffocating, the figures creeping closer, the air thick with unspoken demands. I darted toward the far wall, my eyes darting to the door behind them. They blocked my exit, but I couldn't let them close in. "Help!" I shouted, knowing no one would hear me out there. But maybe, just maybe, I could evoke some sort of response. The journal, the notes, they had to know they were speaking to somebody who understood. "I know about the pact," I yelled, my voice trembling. "I'm not afraid of you." For a moment, they stopped, frozen in place. Their smiles faded, replaced by confusion. It was as if my words had reached something deep within them. Then, the first figure raised the doll, its face twisting into a grimace. "You shouldn't have said that," it hissed. The laughter shifted, turning darker, more chaotic, a rising tide of malice. That's when I spotted it, a glint on the cabin floor just by the door. one of my old camping tools, a heavy hatchet, partially hidden under a pile of fallen leaves. Without thinking, I bolted for it, ignoring the rising chorus of laughter. Adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed the hatchet, turning back to face the figures. They were advancing, eyes aflame with hunger, and my heart sank. "No, stay away from me!" I screamed, brandishing the weapon. As their laughter crescendoed into shrill cries, I realized they were not just trying to take me, they were trying to possess me. I gripped the hatchet tighter, knowing that I had only one chance to make it out alive. With a primal scream, I charged at them, ready for what came next. The dark game was shifting, and I was no more
longer certain if I was the one playing or if I was just another pawn in their chilling game. I swung the hatchet wildly, hoping to keep them at bay. My breath came in sharp gasps as I charged forward. The first figure dodged to the side, its laughter turning into a screech that echoed in the small space. I felt the weight of the others closing in behind it, and my heart raced with fear. "Get away from me!" I shouted again, but my voice felt feeble against their haunting cries. The grip of reality slipped as I felt the shadows wrap around my limbs, tugging at me like a heavy fog. I swung the hatchet again, and this time it connected with something solid, both satisfying and terrifying at once. The first figure stumbled back, clutching its shoulder where the blade had met it. I saw the doll drop to the ground, rolling across the floor until it came to a stop by the old stove. The laughter wavered, but then surged back, more furious than before. "No! You'll pay for that!" another figure shouted. It lunged at me, hands outstretched, but I sidestepped just in time. My instincts kicked in, and I was running for the door, dodging through their ranks. I could hear their whispers, now filled with rage. They needed my fear, but I refused to give in. The moment I reached the door, I swung it open and darted outside, the chill of the night air hitting me like a slap. I stumbled over the threshold, but I didn't stop. I raced into the woods, desperate to put distance between myself and the figures inside. Behind me, their wails echoed, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the crackling of twigs underfoot. I ran blindly, branches whipping at my face and arms, tearing at my skin. I needed to think. The journal, there had to be something in it I could use to protect myself. Maybe there was a way to break their hold on me. Just then, a sudden burst of cold air swept through the trees, and I noticed something, shapes moving in the darkness beyond the flashlight's reach. I skidded to a halt, finding myself surrounded. More figures had emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming like embers. They were dressed in rags, their faces a mix of childlike wonder and horrific desire. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, they were everywhere. I backed up slowly, but then I saw it, a slight glow in the underbrush. A stone. Unlike the others, this one radiated a faint light. That's when I remembered the mention of a blue stone in the journal. It was supposed to repel spirits, not draw them in. But as I reached for it, the figures rushed forward. Fear seized me, and I grasped the stone just as their hands brushed against my skin. I felt a surge, a jolt that shot through my veins. The energy pulsed, and everything exploded into chaos. The figures screamed, their faces contorting in pain as the glow intensified. I didn't know if the stone would work, or if I was only delaying the inevitable, but I had to try. "Stay back!" I shouted, wielding the stone like a shield, and for a moment their advance faltered. That's when I saw the woman among them, older, her eyes a mix of longing and despair. The other figures parted, and she stepped forward, extending a hand toward me. "Help us!" she pleaded, her voice breaking through the cacophony. I froze, the stone buzzing in my palm. Who was she? Did she even belong with them? I felt the weight of a choice pressing down on me. But then, behind her, a shadow flickered. A figure was stepping into the clearing, tall, dark, and entirely familiar. "Run!" I shouted at the woman. I recognized that figure all too well, and I knew I wasn't just in danger for myself anymore. Everything in me screamed to escape, but the stone pulsed more fiercely than before, and I knew I had to face whatever came next. I braced myself as the familiar figure stepped from the shadows. It was the man from my dreams, a dark silhouette with no features I could recognize. He moved forward, slowly, too slowly. The figures around me tensed, but the glow from the stone seemed to hold them at bay. "Stay back!" I shouted again, my voice shaky but determined. I could feel the heat radiating from the stone, its pulse echoing in my hand like a heartbeat. I had never felt such energy before, and it frightened me. The woman with the longing eyes took a step back, fear clouding her features. "Please, you have to help us," she urged, but I couldn't take my eyes off the tall figure now standing just behind her. He was close enough that I could feel the cold seep from him, chilling the air around us. I had to think fast. Confusion swirled inside me. Did I help them, or was this a trap? "Why should I?" I yelled, shifting my gaze between her and the looming figure. "You're all part of this nightmare." My mind raced through the information from the journal. The stone must mean something more than I understood. But instead of answering, the tall figure lifted a hand as if to beckon me closer. My heart sank. There was something both haunting and beautiful about him, yet I couldn't shake the dread that enveloped me. I took a step back, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. Then, without warning, the woman screamed. The stone's glow dimmed momentarily, and chaos erupted. The figure surged forward in a wave, their hands clawing for me. I swung the stone towards them like a weapon, but it felt futile. "Get away!" I shouted, and in that moment an idea broke through my fear. I had to reclaim my power. I focused all my energy into the stone and shouted, "You cannot have me!" The glow intensified. The figures recoiled as if I had struck them. The woman fell back, her expression shifting from despair to something like hope. "Do it! Use it!" she urged, her voice a desperate plea cutting through the noise. The tall figure leaned closer, unyielding. "You are bound to the past. You cannot break free," he murmured, his voice smooth yet chilling. I felt a rush of anger. "Watch me!" I yelled. Gripping the stone, I felt its light enveloping me, hardening my resolve. With the energy rushing through me, I threw the stone at his feet. The moment it hit the ground, it exploded in a blinding flash, filling the clearing with radiant light. For a heartbeat, I dared to hope it was working. But the dark figure didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, a chilling expression that turned my blood cold. The figures dissolved into shadows, merging into the brightness. But he stood unyielding, a sinister calm radiating from him. "Foolish child," he said, his voice echoing like thunder. Then the light started to fade. I realized I had only one chance. I dove forward, aiming to grab the stone again. But everything went dark. The ground slipped from beneath me, and the world fell away. When I opened my eyes, I was in a different place, far removed from the woods. I was no longer surrounded by shadows, but I could still hear their distant wails. Where was I? Had I escaped, or simply stumbled into a new nightmare? My heart raced as I struggled to comprehend my surroundings, but something else was creeping in. Fear and anticipation. Something was coming for me. I just hoped I was ready. I blinked a few times, trying to rid my mind of the lingering darkness. My surroundings came into focus, and I found myself in a narrow, dimly lit hallway. The walls were wooden, worn, and covered with an unsettling amount of dust. A low hum echoed through the space, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Where am I?" I whispered, unable to shake the sense of disorientation. As I pushed myself off the floor, I noticed a door at the far end of the hallway. The hum grew louder, resonating around me like a distant chant. I staggered to my feet, balancing on shaky legs, still feeling the residual energy from the stone coursing through me. Something about it felt incredibly wrong, as if I had stepped directly into a trap. I made my way toward the door, but the atmosphere shifted. It felt heavier, the hum vibrating more forcefully in my chest. I hesitated. There was something beyond that door, something waiting. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity pulled me forward. The thought of what I might find drove me closer, even as dread settled in my stomach. I reached out, fingers trembling as they grazed the door handle. Before I could
Turn it. The door swung open on its own, with a creak that seemed to echo indefinitely. I peered inside. The room was bathed in an eerie blue light, and shadows flitted like phantoms against the walls. In the center stood an old wooden table, its surface cluttered with strange artifacts, an ornate box, crumbling maps, and suddenly my breath caught. There, very distinctly, was the same stone I had wielded moments before, but here it pulsed with an intensity that painted the walls with strange symbols. "How is this possible?" I breathed, stepping cautiously into the room. The hum amplified, turning to a series of discordant notes that matched the rhythm of my racing heart. I approached the table, the stone beckoning to me. I could feel its energy pulling me closer, urging me to understand. "Is this where I need to be?" I asked, though it felt ridiculous talking to inanimate objects. But before I could reach for it, I sensed a movement behind me. My instincts kicked in, and I spun around, panic rising. The hallway had vanished, and I stood alone in that blue-lit room, the door closing itself with a soft thud, as if sealing me in. Then I saw her, the woman from my visions. She stood in the corner, her eyes wide with urgency. "You have to leave," she shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the hum. "I can't go. I need to know what's happening," I yelled back, feeling torn between fear and an overwhelming need for answers. Her expression twisted with a mix of sorrow and determination. "Listen to me. They're watching. You must not disturb the stone." But it was too late. My curiosity overwhelmed me, forcing my hand toward the stone on the table. As I touched it, a surge of energy shot through me. The symbols on the wall flared to life, and the woman screamed, her figure fading like a mirage. "What have I done?" I gasped, feeling the room shift around me. Before I could process what was happening, the air crackled, and shadows gathered at the edges of my vision. Then everything went dark again, but this time the darkness was charged with a sinister energy. I was trapped, and whatever was lurking in the shadows was closing in. "Help!" I screamed, my voice echoing against the absolute silence. I was sure this time I hadn't just stumbled into another part of a nightmare. This was something else, something much worse. I gasped for breath, struggling to orient myself in the engulfing darkness. I could feel something pressing close, its presence like a heavy fog that wrapped around me. The shadows danced menacingly, whispering my forgotten fears. "This can't be real," I murmured, forcing myself to calm down. I needed to think. Instinct took over. I turned slowly, willing my eyes to adjust to the blackness. Maybe I could find a way out. "Hello?" I called, hoping for a response. The silence was thick, swallowing my words. "Is anyone there?" A noise rippled through the darkness, a soft scraping sound, like nails on wood. My heart raced. Was it the shadows, or something more? In that moment, I knew I was not alone. The strange energy from the stone still pulsed within me, mingling with my fear.
It felt almost alive, thrumming against my chest, urging me to take action. I stepped forward, each movement cautious. "I need to get out of here," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. As I moved, the scraping intensified. My breath quickened. I reached out, feeling for walls, anything to guide me. My fingers brushed against something smooth and cool. A corner, perhaps? "Please, I just want to go home," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. And then, abruptly, the darkness faded. Blinding light surged in, forcing me to squint. I stumbled back, the brightness overwhelming. When I finally opened my eyes again, I found myself in a different room. This one was vast and filled with strange mechanical contraptions. Metal gears clicked and whirred, illuminating the space. The sound was mechanical, yet oddly comforting, almost like a heartbeat. My gaze darted around, taking in the bizarre sight. But what shocked me most was the figure in the center, a man dressed in a long coat, his back turned toward me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice tremulous. He turned slowly, and my blood ran cold. His face was obscured by a mask that resembled the stone symbols. "You shouldn't have touched it," he said, his voice echoing as if coming from every angle. "Now you've drawn their attention." "Who?" I demanded, taking a step back. "What have I done?" He sighed, his features hidden behind the mask. "You awakened something locked away for a reason." He moved closer, and I instinctively retreated. "You need to listen to me. You can't stay here. Not now." Before I could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber. My pulse quickened. I glanced around, searching for an exit, but there was none in sight. Panic surged in my chest. "What's coming? What are you talking about?" The man glanced nervously at the approaching noise. "They are here." In that moment, I realized he wasn't referring to merely shadows. Something was hunting me, and the man seemed as terrified as I was. The echoes grew closer, and I had to make a choice. "Help me," I begged, my voice rising. But instead of reassurance, he shook his head, his eyes wide behind the mask. "Run," he shouted. And I would. I had no other option. With the darkness closing in, I took off, racing down an unfamiliar corridor, more terrified than I'd ever been. But I could feel them, whatever they were, right behind me. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew I had to escape. I ran, my feet pounding against the floor as the echo of footsteps behind me grew louder, more insistent. The corridor stretched endlessly, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. My heart raced, each beat hammering against my ribcage. I couldn't look back. It was a mental battle between the instinct to flee and the curiosity gnawing at me to understand what haunted me. The air felt charged, thick with tension, something ominous lurking just beyond my sight, driven by my fears and the warnings I ignored. The whispered laughter from the forest replayed in my mind, echoing the sinister calls from something that should never have existed in the daylight. Just when I thought I couldn't run any farther, the corridor opened into a large, dimly lit chamber. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled into the room, coming to an abrupt stop. The walls were adorned with symbols similar to the ones on the stone, casting flickering shadows in the low light. "Where am I?" I whispered, desperately hoping for an explanation, but all I could manage was my own echo. Suddenly, the entrance I came through began to close, and I turned on my heel, panic surging anew. I had to find another way out. The far wall glimmered with faint light, drawing my gaze. There, nestled between two towering pillars, stood a doorway, small but inviting. I dashed toward it, reaching for the handle just as I heard the heavy footsteps enter the chamber. My heart dropped when I turned to see the figures emerge. They were no longer just shadowy outlines. Their forms were clear, those same children I had seen before. their eyes wide and filled with a haunting mixture of insatiable hunger and despair. "You can't escape," one whispered, its voice a dissonant blend of childlike innocence and adult malice. "You belong to us now." I shoved the door open and burst through, slamming it behind me, but could feel their presence pushing against it, trying to force their way in. I took off down a narrow stairwell illuminated by flickering lights. Each step echoed ominously, urging me on, but I could sense them, those childlike whispers creeping ever closer. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to keep moving. The stairs spiraled down into the depths, the air growing colder with each step I took. The darkness felt alive, reaching out to envelop me. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't give in to the fear that clawed at my mind. At the bottom of the stairwell, the passage opened into yet another chamber, but this one felt different, drier and warmer, with walls of rough stone rather than metal. Sunlight filtered through cracks, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I stumbled forward, losing myself in the brightness, and stumbled into an open area, a cave glowing faintly with phosphorescent minerals. In the center stood an altar, and my gaze fell upon a large blue stone, the very same I had once held against the shadows. This must be it, I thought, my heart racing at the prospect of salvation. If I existed in this plane, maybe I could turn things around, reclaim my power over whatever had been unleashed. The whispers grew louder behind me, a cacophony of taunts mingled with laughter. "Join us," they urged, pulling at my resolve. I turned to face them, no longer afraid. I couldn't allow these tortured souls to claim me as their own. My heart raced, but a sense of purpose filled me, igniting my courage. "I won't play your game," I screamed into the growing darkness, my voice defiant. Not again, I thought, recalling all I had experienced. With renewed determination, I stepped toward the altar, claiming the stone as my own once more. The energy pulsed through me, mingling with the remnants of power lingering from the chaos that followed. "Let's end this," I shouted, raising the stone in defiance, its glow illuminating the chamber in brilliant blue light. The shadows shrieked, retreating from the radiance, their cries filled with rage and desperation. But even as I felt triumphant, I knew it wasn't over. The laughter subsided into a low, thrumming buzz that resonated deep within me, a reminder that the darkness still lingered just beyond reach. I could feel it, the pull of something ancient, something that craved connection. Just as the shadows receded, the tall figure emerged, standing at the passage's edge with a wicked smile. "You think you can escape?" it taunted, clapping slowly. "There will always be another game to play." "Who are you?" I gasped, recognizing the danger but unwilling to back down. "I am the keeper of this realm," he said, his voice smooth, dripping with dark allure. "And child, you have tasted the darkness. You cannot unsee what you've seen." Suddenly, the walls trembled, and the sound of chaotic whispers filled the chamber once more. My heartbeat quickened as I clutched the stone, bracing myself against the rising tide of shadowy figures closing in. The entities, the playful children of the woods, were not just lost. They were bound to him. They were waiting for someone to lead them deeper into the darkness once again. My escape had only deepened the thread entwined between us. In that moment, as shadows filled the cave, I knew I could either succumb to the weight of fear or rise against it. Leaving was a choice I might never see, but the shimmer of hope flickered within. The echoes of that summer, a summer soaked in whispers that still beckoned to me, filled my mind. But was it possible to sever the connection between us? I had to find a way. I had to make it out and understand the nature of what haunted me. As the weight of the shadows pressed in, I realized I had the power to shape the narrative, even in the face of the unknown. I may not know everything, I said defiantly, my grip tightening around the stone once more. But you will not have me. With that, I summoned every ounce of strength, ready to confront whatever darkness awaited me in that fractured realm. As the shadows rushed forward, the future unfurled ambiguously before me, echoing with both uncertainty and determination. Whatever emerged, I would meet it head on.